Sonia Nahardeen, and welcome to Cane Roots Art Gallery in conjunction with Callaloo Network Culture TV, broadcasting over Tempo Network. Welcome to Art of the Bush Tea. Before we get into our segment with art educators Nyaris Walker and Travis Bracey, I want to make sure that I pull in the main portion of this segment, which is bush tea. So I want to bring your attention to this grass here called guinea grass, which is grown all over the island. And it's actually the landscaper that told me that that's not regular grass. It wasn't lemongrass, but it was guinea grass. So I'm going to ask Nyaris, who also confirmed the other day for me, what is guinea grass?
Guinea grass is basically it grows wild across the island. It grows in clumps, so sometimes we just kind of like rip it up from the roots, and you can make a chlorophyll drink out of it. Basically blend it, you can blend it with some ginger, and then strain it. Obviously with water, strain it, and you have a fresh, real strong green drink. And it's not boiled or anything like that, so you get all the nutrients from the chlorophyll. There may be other things you could add to it, but that's just one little recipe that I'm familiar with.
Very good. So I learned something in the past 2 weeks about guinea grass and chlorophyll. But today's tea that I made myself is made from hibiscus and turmeric. So I boiled the hibiscus and I added turmeric to it. Nyaris said a better benefit of using turmeric is actually to add black pepper. I didn't do this in this preparation of tea, but I just wanted to show you what turmeric looks like in its closest, more natural state, because you dig it out from the ground. This is a little bit cleaner. And this is the hibiscus leaves in its form once it's dried out, which makes a great tea and has a lot of nutrients and vitamin C. Yeah, the flower. Yeah. Okay.
Very tangy.
Yeah, and I think our tea, we all can say that our tea today is very tangy.
But it's also really a good combination with the turmeric.
Yeah, good.
So too, it just has
a
nice smooth flavor.
Very comforting smell.
Yeah, it's true.
So as we move on through our hour with you, it's a very exciting hour because it started with Nyaris's exhibit here in the gallery, which has been up since December. And then my vision, which has been to have students to be able to come to the gallery, which would be an extension of their classroom. And then that week when I had that thought, boom, Travis showed up to see Nyaris's work and to talk about bringing her students in very small groups to the gallery. And then we formed this incredible alliance with Nyaris's work, the gallery, Travis's work as an art teacher at St. Mary's School. So we have, how many visits did we have in total?
Well, we brought 4 classes, so we had 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
And I have to tell you, you could see the developmental stages between 5th and 8th graders. The day that she brought the 5th graders in, they were bouncing,
That class too does not, it's mostly boys.
Yes, they had incredible energy.
Incredible energy.
Yeah, that's what I always try to say with children. I say things in the most positive ways. They had incredible energy. They'll move from one painting to the next, ask a question, and then bounce back. But no matter what, with that burst of energy, they stayed with the artwork. It wasn't like, I needed to go out of the gallery. They just wanted to be in the space and kind of move through it. But it was just really a good observation to see the different stages of their maturity. And Travis brought a group in, and then there was one young woman she
was 8th grader.
She was an 8th grader, and automatically you could see what her focus was like in reference to the other grade. But within all of it, I have to say it was a wonderful experience having all of the students, because it just brought to life my experience of being a teacher. I always taught very young children. I had to be on their level because they were toddlers, at easels, or I would take large pieces of paper, tape it up against the wall, and I would hold the cup or they would hold the cup, and they would just do really wide strokes of painting. So this all is so much reminiscent of being in my preschool and my toddler years of working with young children. So there's an important question that really, I would say that really got to me based on what Tralles created. Tralles created an enrichment field trip questionnaire, which had 6 questions on it for the students. And the question was, let me see which was my favorite question. It was the one
While you look for it, maybe I can also just explain that in my experience, if you bring children to a gallery, they come in and they don't really know what to do. They feel very out of place, not quite sure what to do. And so what I have always done when I would bring students to a space is to create an activity to force them to engage in the work. So some of these questions were strategically placed. For example, one of them was to find how many paintings NIARS uses the white of the paper as a color. And when we did that, that forced the children to have to engage in looking and really looking like in the piece.
Right, it's a very detailed thing to look for.
Very detailed. And if you don't know that, it's almost all of your work.
Well,
So
yeah, all the watercolors, I
Yeah.
I don't use the China white. I just
Yeah.
to keep that luminosity, you use paper.
And we talked about that,
Yeah.
about that's like a conscious choice, especially, for example, like in your paintings of the quadrille dancers in between the skirts.
Right.
It allows for the viewer to really travel in that space. And then when we would return back to the school, I would talk about how that's what curators do. They will cull through a collection of an artist's work and really look at how that artist chose to make marks and then start to analyze that. So it's fun, and there's so many little bits and pieces of ways that you can engage children, and they really engaged.
Oh,
Like, they-
absolutely, they did.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a critical, I mean, giving them those questions is a way to get them to think critically,
Mhm.
to build a critical thinking skills, and that's one of the things that the arts do. It builds critical thinking skills. And that's just one of the many things that the arts are good for. And I'm a proponent of the arts, so, and I also took my students we're teaching online right now. I'm fully online, so I don't have access to bring my students, so they can come and see this, but they can see it online. And as soon as we get back into school, for sure, they'll be coming in to see whatever exhibit Sonia has
Yeah.
in here.
I remember once when I was walking down through Christiansted, and there were a pile of students at Top Hat.
Yes.
And they were all sort of sitting there and talking, and it was exciting to see young people engaging in the humanities in
For the
that way.
25 years I've taught here, I have taken, I believe, at least one field trip with my students every single year. I try to take 4, just to make sure I take a good amount of students per year. But at least one for sure will be done in the school year, except last year and this year.
Well, and it's
So far.
challenging because of logistics,
Right,
like when
obviously.
you're having to deal with permission slips and buses. And so, what was so beautiful with St. Mary's School, we're just up the road. So I timed it one day, and it was 1 minute and 50 seconds to walk from St. Mary's to this beautiful new gallery. So for the students also, they loved being able to walk down here. And it was so easy for us to make it happen. So thank you.
Yeah, and for majority of our students, especially I teach in public school, they don't get that kind of exposure to the arts. I didn't have that when I was going to school. I teach other schools that I attended as a child. So for me, it's really important because, we are supporters of the arts, so we know I'm speaking to the choir, obviously, that art broadens your horizons. If you cannot travel, art brings you to places and to spaces, and it also connects with you experientially. So every student who looks at a piece of art is going to see it differently. And then, you can have conversations around that.
Right. Well, and just enrichment in general, like if children have the ability and the agency to enter into museums or gorgeous libraries or go to theater or listen to jazz, it opens up so many beautiful aspects of our world. And I can't speak enough about enrichment. I mean, it's
Yeah, but the other side of enrichment or lack of enrichment sometimes comes from, I think, where our governments or cities or towns, if they are not committed to the arts and the enrichments of the arts, then those children suffer in terms of the access for those children being able to get out to do it, or the materials available in the schools for things to happen. In some places, in some states, I guess I would say, and I think I feel very comfortable saying it, in some cities the budgets might be larger, or some towns or some counties might have a fuller budget, or maybe they're allocated more, or they become very creative as to how they can use their monies for their children to have access and materials in the classroom, as opposed to some classrooms in some counties and some cities and some districts not being able to have the same quality of materials in there. And I think some teachers really feel it, especially if teachers have to dig within their own resources to buy their materials for their classroom. And that's kind of shameful when district or county, and I'm trying not to point a finger at any particular place. I'm originally from New York City, and I worked in the public school system. But I have to say, in my nursery where I worked with those children, there wasn't a day that I lacked a pint of paint. We were always full of paint. I always had sand. The water was always available, but there was always material. There wasn't a year starting that I did not have 50 hard books for toddlers to use. And then you go to other places and you see the inequity in terms of resources. So you have to ask yourself, when municipalities, and I know I'm being very political, when municipalities receive monies, how are those monies being allocated where they need to be in order to enrich the lives of children? Because you and I, like we say, preaching to the choir, we all know these are the things that make children develop. I once read, when my daughters were going to ballet school, Dance Theater of Harlem, there was a big notice, a big article, that children who have extracurricular activities, it could be fencing, it could be music, it could be playing the saxophone, jazz, whatever, they scored higher on their SATs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because again, it's a critical thinking. There's an intangible thing, enrichment, right? That intangible thing that comes from the arts that help students think differently.
Yeah.
I think for me, if a student doesn't have some sort of art education, whether it be music or dance, whatever the form of activity is that uses their other intelligences beyond just the graphs and the core, they are severely lacking in their education. And I think we do our students a disservice when we don't allow them to engage in some form of artistic expression.
I agree. And at one point when you were talking about materials, it's so interesting. My first day at St. Mary's, one of the children, as I was bringing things in, had said, well, I'm not very good at art, so I've never really liked art. And I'm so thankful that that young man said that, because it made me stop and think for a minute as to how I was going to present to those children who have never really necessarily had the facility to draw. And so we started out with paper mache, and I decided in the process of doing this that what I was going to show the children about art is it is about understanding how materials work, and our lives are surrounded by materials, whether it's concrete or fiber or paper. And so if children, like if I can allow for these children and guide these children from first grade to 8th grade to step out of that school and have an understanding that paper mache works because the flour mixes with the water. And in the process of the flour and water mixing, it turns to sucrose. And when the water evaporates, the sucrose becomes crystallized and hard.
So Travis, we are going to come back and pick up with that. So we'll be right back with you. We're going to take our break. Thank you.
So I think you might have forgotten to explain.
Representative Erica Thomas. This amazing event where we are going to announce the nominees for the Walk of Fame, not just any Walk of Fame, the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame is so important because we have to preserve Black history. And that is why we are here today during Black History Month, preserving Black history over and over again. I'm so excited to be here and to be the co-chair of the Georgia Entertainment Caucus, as one of the founding members of this Walk of Fame.
Hi, I'm Catherine Britton, Vice President of BMI. I'm also the co-chair of the Georgia Entertainment Caucus and a board member for BAM. We're here tonight celebrating the nominations for the Black Music Walk of Fame inductees. Atlanta is a Black music mecca. We have been the fiber and so much of the heart of music with James Brown, Otis Redding, so many greats, Ray Charles. Why not Atlanta? And the home of Dr. Martin Luther King. So history was made and will be made tonight. So thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Demet Guidry. I'm the founder of the Black American Music Association. And tonight we are celebrating the greatest art form on the planet, Black American music. There are over 50 genres, including New Jack Swing and disco and funk, that are part of the Black American music art form. And we're here tonight to celebrate some of our greats and our legends and pay homage to those that are the very bedrock of culture. So tonight at the Black American Music event that we're doing in conjunction with the Georgia Entertainment Caucus, we are launching and announcing the nominees for the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame. And in June 12th, we'll be actually inducting and putting the emblem into the ground here in Atlanta, Georgia. We chose Atlanta, Georgia because it is the mecca of all Black entertainment. So we're happy to work in conjunction with the state as well as the city and Mayor Lance Bottoms to make sure that this much needed monument is erected.
Hey there, my name is Michael Malden, and I'm the chairman of the Black American Music Association, and I'm a partner with the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame, the executive that is. And reaching out, letting all my brothers and sisters down the Caribbean know what we're doing here in the city of Atlanta. We were here tonight where we have basically introduced to the world the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame, and that is where we will be laying down, similar to like the Hollywood Walk of Fame, except we're doing ours with a crown, where we will honor kings and queens of Black music and entertainment, and really give our legacy a chance to be seen and be heard, as well as educate our next generation. And when you come to Atlanta, because I know you're coming, please come and check us out. Again, it's not an Atlanta or a Georgia thing, it just happens to be here in Atlanta, Georgia, but it's international, so we need you to come.
And we're back. I'm Sonia Nahardeen. We're live at www.kingrootsartgallery.com. Also on Kalaloo Network Culture TV, broadcasting on Tempo Network. Welcome as I'm hosting Art Over Bush Tea. As we're returning back to this segment, we're going to have Nyaris continue the conversation where we ended in the last segment.
Right, so we were speaking briefly about material, having or not having materials, and also in terms of the students feeling intimidated when they come into an art class. Oh, I can't draw. I don't like art. This has been my experience with art. And I can only speak to what my students have told me. Oh, my teacher just used to give me paper and tell us to draw. Oh, my teacher gave me a 0 because I didn't color in between the lines or whatever. There's these like strict, stringent rules for art. So I try to teach my students, like you said, you don't need to know how to draw to make art because it is about the space you're working on and how to arrange materials on that space. So I don't start with drawing activities per se. Because they really aren't, especially the upperclassmen, like 12th graders who were, I always remember this one story. The student was a Princeton-bound student. She had like valedictorian as her goal, and they put her in art her last semester, or second to last semester of high school, and she was anxiety, like big time, oh my God, I don't know art, what am I gonna do? I don't want to fail. But of course, being the industry student she is, she did her very best, and it was basic art. So it was introducing elements and principles and teaching you how to arrange space and so on. She got a 99. Now, it still wasn't enough for her, but she got a 99, which in my class is a big deal. So, and she said to me after, she said, of all my classes throughout my year, I learned more in your class than any other. This is a Princeton-bound student. And those kinds of things are what keep me teaching, I'll tell you.
It is. And when children realize that they're starting to get a handle on the world and that they have abilities to actualize what they want to make and vision, you have really empowered human beings when they step out that door.
Because art is communication, right? It is a communication, it's a language. And if you don't, when I teach art, a lot of times people want to have, creative expression. People want to, I want to make abstract art, but what are you saying? Even abstract artists, so-called, they have something they are saying, communicating, and that's why with someone else it might resonate amazingly, like, a Rothko or, any one of those, like, 1950s.
I showed a Rothko painting to the kids the other day, and they're like,
huh? That's right, they don't, right. And as an art teacher, it took me a while still to really understand, even with Cubism, to like really get Cubism, or even to get Vasily Kandinsky, you have to read up on an artist a lot of the time so you understand what you're doing. And even still you read on it, you're like, whatever. But the more you engage with the arts, the more you recognize what is important about the different forms of expression that there is. And I was trained DBAE, that's discipline-based art education, where I'm teaching the students different disciplines, principles and elements, trying to bring in history and the other disciplines as well into the arts. And then there are other types of pedagogical, things like visual culture, creative expression, and mostly students want to create expressively, but they don't have the tools. You cannot write a story.
For the confidence.
They don't have the confidence because they don't have the tools, right? You cannot write an essay if you don't even know your ABCs. Right. That's just, so when a lot of times when my students come to me in high school from 9 to 12 is what I teach, they have not had art for the entire school period. Or maybe they've had it in like the 4th or 5th grade. So they're coming in with, it's like they're coming in with 5th grade level art knowledge, and that depends on whether or not their teacher was actually an art teacher and not a substitute giving them art. Right? So I almost have to do damage control, reverse values, and my hardest job is getting our students to value the art and recognize what they can learn. And I think for the most part, over the years, I've had students come back to me and say, thank you for teaching me this. Oh, wow, I know I understand why you were teaching me that. So, that may be 1 in 10 or whatever, but that's still good because you're only out there to reach one.
But this is the thing. It's not an arts integrated. Most of the times when I look at curriculums, be it starting, maybe some first graders do have it, but anywhere from Second to eighth grade, I find a huge drop in an art integrated, art enriched program in terms of whatever you're studying. I find that when you're in preschool, when you're in the segment of infant and toddler, lots of creativity, because I said you're either working in water, you're working in sand, you're working in paint, you're working in Play-Doh, all those things that require children to use their hands. Children go into preschool, the same thing is happening. They go into kindergarten, that still follows through. But then it's like, boom, after kindergarten, it's like, it's almost, something is written into the curriculum, like, I feel that all of a sudden that is now considered play, and now we start something else.
You know what's interesting about
But
that
it is-
too,
I'm
Sonia?
sorry.
Oh.
No, I was gonna just say, it is play, but you learn through play, and why can't we play as adults? Why can't we continue to play?
You know what's interesting? As I was reading this book, and I feel like it was like in the late 1990s, and I can't remember the author, but it was called The World is Flat, and it was basically about the global economy. But in one of the chapters in The World is Flat, he asked both Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, like, do you think that you will move your headquarters at some point to China? And in his book, they both said, probably not, because there is a kind of creativity that happens in the United States that just is not happening in China. Even though they're having a huge amount of work done in China, that kind of creativity he was saying he was finding here, which was based on, you know, education, where we had industrial arts and home economics, and we had art as everyday activities. So he's speaking to a generation, you know, of the 60s and 70s, where those people were using that kind of thinking, where you're understanding like how things go together, how you sew something, how fabric works.
Right, and you're gonna use math. You have to know math to be able to cut fabric to the right size and to use measurements. One of the things I found that our students were deficient in almost every year was how to use a ruler.
Oh yeah.
You know, how to use a ruler, and then not knowing how to use a ruler also makes you deficient in fractions.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
Yeah. I teach. I'm by no means a math teacher.
No, I hadn't
But you have to
realized
teach
having
that
to
stuff, you know?
make a half an inch
Yes.
down an 18-inch piece of paper was going to take the entire class. You know, like
Absolutely.
that.
I used to have them draw a ruler, make the marks, then I teach fractions to them. I'm like, you know, in a lot of ways you kind of get annoyed because you're like, these things should have been known already, so that I can actually just move on to having the art. But it's like this: if you don't have the language, you can't. You know, if you don't have the vocabulary, you cannot speak the language, and all of that is vocabulary.
And I thought to myself, like, where did I learn to measure? And I think I learned to measure from my grandfather and my father. So I don't know if you can remember where you learned to measure, like if it was in school or not.
I probably learned to measure, I think I learned to measure at home because my mom was a seamstress.
Yes.
I think that was probably my beginnings of measuring, because there was a tape measure at home. And actually being raised in a post-colonial environment, being raised in Guyana, under the British system of education, and then what we had after, rulers were always an integral part of everything that we did. Every child's pencil case came with a ruler. So you had a pencil case, you went to school with a pencil case, and a notebook and a ruler. So those were the three things that you had: pencil case, rulers, and a notebook. So those are the three things that went together.
Right.
I grew up in Dominica for the early years of my life, and we had a metric system, and I knew and understood that. But when I moved here, we went into the like inches and
Which
so
really
on.
makes
So
no
that's right,
sense.
and I had to switch that. But then, you know, I forgot everything about the metric system, and then nobody was really using rulers here. And I asked a math teacher once, and he said, you know, they don't teach applied art. You know, they don't teach applied art here. So I'm like, well, what's the purpose of the applied math? Okay.
Yes.
What is the purpose of the math you're teaching if you know they can't apply it to everyday life? You know what I mean?
So I wanted to ask that question now. Let's say you have a student who has been this way so much in the applied sciences, the math, learning to read and write, and all of a sudden comes to you, hasn't had the experience with me, in toddler life or preschool life in terms of the art exposure, because they were home and maybe schooling for them started in kindergarten. And suddenly there's no play there also too in that kindergarten. Then all of a sudden comes to 5th grade and all of a sudden there's art, and all of a sudden feels extremely intimidated, like the experience that you gave. What do you start with? I remembered you saying a sentence, but I can't think of it because this is such an organic time for talking to both of you being teachers and art. What are some of the rudiments and what is some of the comfort levels in terms of making students feeling very comfortable as they walk into this situation and not being turned off at this point of their life by this beauty in which we call art?
Well, I'll start. I'll tell you first of all, I'll start with the last part of the sentence. Being turned off or not turned off, sometimes the students come with such a set mind that doesn't matter what kind of activity I do with them, they hate art, they hate it, and there's nothing I can do about it, no matter what I try. And there are some students who come in with that intimidation, and I can work them through it. And you have students who come in who think they're the greatest since Picasso. Those are probably my hardest students to teach anything to, right? However, I try to find out from them what they think art is. Then we look at various types of artwork and we critique artwork. So I try to do that first, just to get them relaxed about, okay, I don't have to draw, sculpture, painting, just different things. But when it comes down to actually making art, I actually start with line. I might pull like a blade of grass from outside, and I'll pull a long leaf or different types of lines and a twig, and I'll bring it into the classroom and I'll tell them, look, these are what in art, when we look at objects, we reduce them to the basic elements, and these are all different kinds of lines, and I'll have them draw it. I mean, who can't draw a blade of grass? They don't feel intimidated by that because it's just a line. And it's so small, they can't see any details of it because I have it right there in the middle of the room. I may even hold on to it depending, because it can't stand up on its own, right? And they draw it and they think, okay. And then I have them build on top of that. So they would draw that one line on top of the twig, and then they would just kind of be, and then you have a drawing. Right. And it's just that simple. And then they move on from there. Sometimes it's design, like I'll just have them draw. We learn. I literally had a 12th, and I have to go back to my 12th graders. These poor children don't have art until they hit the 12th grade a lot of the time. And I taught them about art, and I talked about how that there are really only 2 types of lines: rectilinear lines and curvilinear lines, right?
So say that first again. There are only 2 types of
lines: rectilinear lines and curvilinear lines. So rectangular lines or angular lines, and lines that are curved. And you have variations on those 2 lines: long, short, horizontal. The directions will change: horizontal, vertical, diagonal. And my student, he went, it never occurred to them, right? Like that is how you get all the variations. Like we're dealing with color theory right now.
Yeah.
And you know what? We've got 12 colors on. We basically use the 12 color wheel, basic color wheel system. And they're learning about intensity of colors and value of colors and how we have all the myriad of colors that we have in the world. So for them, it's like an eye opener.
Yeah. There was this photographer, his name is Thomas Martin, and he would make these absolutely beautiful botanical photographs. And prior to my working with children, I worked as a curator, so a lot of times I would do oral histories with him. And one of my favorite quotes from him was, he said to me, Trellis, most people are overwhelmed by the world and they don't see the order in it, which is so true. Like if you really stop and think about the order of it, like even just with paper mache, like if you actually understand what happens to paper mache in terms of the water evaporating and things crystallizing and the science part, it makes sense. It makes sense.
And this is what I tell my students. The arts are where everything else you learn come together. This is where they coalesce. It's in the arts.
So with that said, it was so much fun because we made tissue paper lanterns and the children learned about overlay of color, and we walk in here and your 3 paintings, immediately the children recognized your tissue paper, they recognized where the overlay of color happened, and there was an agency and a power in their understanding that and understanding the material that you used.
right.
You know, they were
And knowing how
excited.
to use that, it's like, oh, it's just doesn't always have to be paint on paper. I could do that. I could use
Yes.
other materials, you know,
Yes.
to create color stories or whatever.
Yes.
Matter of fact, we're going to continue for just a little bit longer, but when we come back, we're going to start looking at some of the children as they look at the artwork on their days of visiting. We'll do that. Briefly, I think we can pick up this painting behind me, and it's called, which one is this called, Maya?
Reaching out to you.
Reaching out. So tell us just in a few words, in a sentence before we go to our next break, what's happening here?
Well, I wanted to try and create a kind of ephemeral and ethereal feeling with the work. And so when I did, and I also, because I didn't want them to have, I want to take away the sense of space. If you look at any of the work, there is no specificity to their location, maybe except for the three graces, right? And so that's why I created it that way, using those kind of spatial, cosmic colors, and what may be stars, what may be something else, it look like little things floating or whatever. And I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but that's kind of where it is. I wanted them to be all encompassing of human being, of living being, of, you know, just part of the universe and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I felt it was almost like in three different sections, you know, from the light going into another space, and then to another space, and then her skirt was still of another space. It's
Right, well, and there's that three-dimensionality of her moving through space, even if there's not a specific, like, perspective.
all right. We're going to take a break, and we will be back. Thank you.
I used to watch BET, MTV, VH1, now I watch Tempo. Soca, Calypso, Reggae Dance, oh, don't stall, better get tuned in to the tempo. Don't have cable, they got an app. Go to your app store, download that. Whether it's tourism, cuisine, or the social scenes, if it ain't tempo, it's a rap. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. It's the latest in Caribbean news. Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too. Tempo. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. It's the latest in Caribbean news. Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too. Tempo.
Hi, welcome back. We're live at www.canerootsartgallery.com. We're with Callaloo Network, Culture TV, and we're broadcasting also on Tempo Network. Welcome back. I'm your host, Sonia Nahardeen, and my wonderful art teachers visiting today, Nyaris Walker and Travis Bracey. And Nyaris is our artist, almost I said artist in residence, but has been the artist on exhibit here at the gallery. So welcome back. And we're going to start this segment with specifically the students' visits and their responses and their actual reactions that you will see in their photographs. Here we go.
Okay, so in the first image that you see, you'll see Sonia working with one of the students who is Rokoy, and Rokoy is a 6th grader. And each child was given what we call kind of like a scavenger hunt. And we had 6 questions, like Sonia had mentioned earlier. And so at different points in time, the children sometimes are not sure, if they've gotten the correct answer or not. I often will not give them the correct answer. Like a lot of times I'll just say, you need to go back and look again, and let's look at what your answer ends up being. So at the beginning of our experience, I usually have a question posed that allows for the children to take a look at every painting in the gallery. So it will force them to look at each painting. And it also disperses the children so they're not clumped in little groups. In this piece, Rokoy and Sonia are looking at what is called Reaching Out, which we had just seen. Just below that, we have Yanisha and Jason in the back. And what I love about the scavenger hunt for these children is it gives them time to individually look at these pieces. So you'll see in many of these photographs, the children individually taking time to reflect on what they've seen. We had one child, Maylene, who I have one of her sheets with her answers here. She finished very, very early. She's in 6th grade, and I thought, maybe she just had these really quick answers. And when I took a look at her sheet, I asked her to show me, and I said, Maylene, let me see, and maybe you need to go back around and take a look. So in the second question, it says, in art class, while painting our pumpkins, so when we were at school, the children, instead of using orange, they mixed red and yellow together to create orange, and many of the children had never experienced that before. So we talked about how when you blend yellow and red, you'll get orange. So I asked the children to begin to find paintings where you would see colors being blended. And I said, describe where you see the colors blend in the painting until, and what colors do you see being blended? And she wrote, purple and lilac, pink and green are blended. These colors are creating a frequency and a transition, which I was floored by her ability to understand how color can have frequency. And you were talking earlier about how you're going to be working with Kandinsky's artwork with the students, and how, you know, so much of his focus on painting was color and the
sound.
Spirituality
And sound.
and
Because
sound.
For him, color had that frequency of sound that
Right.
when he saw color, when he saw color, it had a sound, had a note. When he heard music, it had a color. So it kind of, there was a thing that they call it a disease. I don't remember the name. Something that he had some
Synesthetic. He's a
ability,
synesthete.
right? That
Yeah.
to that how he experienced color and sound
Yeah.
that way. But what she said there, what are the two colors she said? Orange.
She said purple and lilac, pink and green are blended.
Oh, okay.
We don't have the painting until you
No,
sold it, which
right.
is wonderful.
Yes.
But, yeah.
So, well, you know, those colors are, with the pink and the green obviously are complementary colors, and if you put them together, they are going to resonate. They are going to have some sort of visual frequency, if that's a thing. I don't know, you know, because
It is a thing.
complementary
Sure,
colors,
sure, yeah.
they resonate with each other. They make each other brighter and shine.
Right.
So, again, I was telling you before while we were on break that it's a deliberate choice to put in specific colors. So it's not haphazard at all.
Right.
To use the colors that I use. I use certain colors, for example, the one back here, which is back to you, she's got all these yellow oranges on her, so I needed that blue violet for the complement so that she can really stand out against the red violet, blue violet that's back there. So it was not an unconscious choice at all.
Right. Yeah. So for the children to take time to begin to look at the pieces, it's an integral part in their ability to be able to go back to the classroom and then apply what they've learned here. And so I do believe, like, if people have the ability to take children out of the classroom and to go and see art outside of the classroom, it reinforces and inspires them to do even more work, I think.
As an artist, I need to go out and see other artists.
Right.
I need to go to museums. It's never when I go to some town or city that I don't find some kind of gallery or museum to go to. It feeds me. I really need that kind of like boost. It's like vitamins for me.
Yes.
It's not because I want to create like another artist creates, but what it does is it encourages me to continue what I am doing, because there's so many different artists doing so many different things that you feel, okay, yeah, you know, what I'm doing is good, what I'm doing is worthy, what I'm doing is necessary, you know, it's.
And that's why getting back to, again, and going back to what we were talking about before, with institutions who have very large endowments, they look to, or should not, have a fee. When you do go, it's a donation or whatever, you have a suggested donation, but you get in because not everyone will have an equal access or an equal playing field to be able to get in. So if I'm 14 and I just want to go to the Temple of Dendur at the Met and just spend the entire day soaking that in to understand what that faraway place like Egypt looks like, and that I might not be able to get there now, but I can actually get there, take out my drawing book, my little book, and start sketching and to have that experience. It's so very important that children, that young people, that everybody just really, that they are able to access wherever they go, to access culture, to have that experience, to have art.
And I mean, we have cultural arts here, but I think with the world, it's important, yes, for your local culture to be exhibited, to be for the students or your children to know and engage in it. But because of such a global world that we live in right now, it's important that, because you're not going to live here all your lives, you're going to go other places, and it's important that you be able to engage in different scenarios, different social structures, and be able to have conversations.
Yeah.
You know, and they may not know what you're getting now, but when later they're like, you know, I remember doing this or seeing that, and what I also told my students, after my higher level students, when we do art criticism, when we really go down into art criticism, is that your experience and the way you look at a work of art is going to be different than how somebody else does, because they have different experiences, but it's also going to change when you look at that art 10 years from now.
Yes.
50 years from now.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. So to speak to that, one of our last question on the scavenger hunt, so to speak, is called, what is your favorite painting? Give the name of the painting and describe it. What do you like about it? Is it the subject matter, the mood of the painting, or just the colors? And Jaden Overseen actually had said Faya because I need my reading glasses. Oh, it's colorful and creative, and it shows Black culture. So,
and that is the painting. Actually, Faya is the one on the scene. I think it's probably the next one, with the three paintings in the back, the three colorful paintings in the back, where there's one student by herself.
Yes.
So Faya is actually the one on the far, if we're looking at it and the audience, our listening audience, or viewing audience is seeing it, it's the one with the cutlass. Is that what you call it, or machete?
Cutlass, machete,
Yes,
machete.
yes, that's Faya. And Faya, I don't know if it was Nayaris's intent, but I'm assuming that Faya is based on the uprising, the labor uprising here on St. Croix, led by the 4 queens. It was in total 4?
Well, yeah, it was 4. I grew up learning it was 3, and then through more research, I found out it was 4. I just did the 3 because it's just still like when we think it, we have to consciously say, oh, 4. But for the most part, as soon as we think about it, we say the 3 queens, Queen Mary, Matilda, Bottom Belly, right? And I didn't want to name them that,
right?
Because for me, it's using a historical reference to talk about the actions we need to take now, right? So I use the historical image to really make a comment about how we really need to be more active in making the changes that we need to see in our society happen. Yeah. And if it takes a firebomb, then that's what it takes. I mean, we have to go out there and really put ourselves at risk for the things that we believe in and the things we see that really will change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I love that particular shot, that photograph, because I love the fact that we have a very young student just really taking a perspective on an artist at this current time, possibly interpreting something from a time in the past and the history. So that particular photograph I really liked a lot. And then we have the others.
And so as we look further, you can see that each child is taking time to look at what the question is, and then taking time to find the answer within the painting. And I think it's important for us to realize as adults, when we bring children to be enriched, it's not enough to just have them walk in the room, that you really do need to begin to have conversations with them and ask things of them. And when you ask things of children, they typically rise to the occasion. Actually, an example at one point with Dianica David, she had brought a group of students to the Caribbean Museum Center for the Arts, and I had assumed they were her students from like her art camp, so they were all exceptional art students. And I brought them around, and we did a very similar situation where we had, we were looking at the pieces, and in the end, one of the volunteers said, I can't believe how good the children were. But it was because they were asked to rise to the occasion, and many of these children were in special ed and had a very hard time focusing, but when we engaged them, something shifted.
Right, and we had verbal conversation.
And I think generally, because we have low expectations of children,
Yes.
we sometimes go into a mindset. We seem to have this mindset about children and what they're able to do, which is a big annoyance for me. That children have so many creative abilities in terms of different things that their desires. Like my 4-year-old grandson, he's so much into dinosaurs. And then my son-in-law just sent me something, the peak that most times that children love dinosaurs or knows the most about dinosaurs. It's 4-year-olds. It was
And those
fascinating.
are 5-syllable words often, those
Yes.
dinosaurs, yeah.
So
Yeah.
children rise to the occasion, and,
Yeah,
and the thing that we've had about this experience here in the gallery and the students visiting is that they rose to the occasion. They were given this was their scavenger hunt. These were their questions, 6 questions. And they were able to answer in the most intellectual ways. They were able to decipher color and to figure out the different levels in which these works were created. I cannot thank Trellis enough for bringing the students here, for Nyaris to have the exhibit with us for 2 months. It's been a joy and a pleasure. And again, this is Sonia Nahardin. Please reach out to us at www.kingrootsartgallery.com to be able to see this. If you didn't see it live, you can go back to the website and to see us there. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure with you this afternoon.